chapter and the first verse. King Solomon. Solomon, son of David, took a firm grip on the reins of his kingdom. God was with him and gave him much help. Solomon addressed all Israel, the commanders and captains, the judges, every leader, and all the heads of the families. And Solomon and the entire company went to the worship center at Gibeon. That's where the tent of meeting of God was, the one that Moses, the servant of God, had made in the wilderness. The chest of God, though, was in Jerusalem. David had brought it up from Kiriath Jearim, prepared a special place for it, and pitched a tent for it. But the bronze altar that Bezaleel, son of Uriah, son of Hur, had made was in Gibeon, and in its place before the tabernacle of God. And that is where Solomon and the congregation gathered to pray. Solomon worshiped God at the bronze altar in front of the tent of meeting. He sacrificed 1,000 whole burnt offerings on it. That night, God appeared to Solomon. God said, "What do you want from me? Ask." Solomon answered, "You are extravagantly generous with David, my father. Now you've made me king in his place. Establish, God, the words you spoke to my father, for you've given me a staggering task, ruling this mob of people. Yes, give me wisdom and knowledge as I come and go among this people, for who on his own is capable of leading these, your glorious people?" So they've gone from a mob to glorious people. I see. God answered Solomon, "This is what has come out of your heart. You didn't grasp for money, wealth, fame, and the doom of your enemies. You didn't even ask for a long life. You asked for wisdom and knowledge so you could govern well my people over whom I've made you king. Because of this, you get what you asked for." That's a sermon right there. You get what you asked for. Wisdom and knowledge, and I'm presenting you the rest as a bonus. Money, wealth, and fame beyond anything the kings before or after you had or will have. Then Solomon left the worship center at Gibeon in the tent of meeting and went to Jerusalem. He set to work as king of Israel. Solomon collected chariots and horses, 1,400 chariots and 12,000 horses. He stabled them in the special chariot cities as well as in Jerusalem. The king made silver and gold as common as rocks, and cedar as common as the fig trees in the lowland hills. His horses were brought in from Egypt and Cilicia, specially acquired by the king's agents. Chariots from Egypt went for 15 pounds of silver, and a horse for about 3¾ of a pound of silver. Solomon carried on a brisk horse trading business with the Hittite and Aramean royal houses. 2 Chronicles 2, temple construction begins. Solomon gave orders to begin construction on the house of worship in honor of God and a palace for himself. Solomon assigned 70,000 common laborers, 80,000 to work the quarries in the mountains, and 3,600 foremen to manage the workforce. Then Solomon sent this message to King Hiram of Tyre: "Send me cedar logs, the same kind you sent David my father for building his palace. I'm about to build a house of worship in honor of God, a holy place for burning perfumed incense, for setting out holy bread, for making whole burnt offerings at morning and evening worship, and for Sabbath, new moon, and holy day services of worship, the acts of worship required of Israel. The house I'm building has to be the best, for our God is the best, far better than competing gods. But who is capable of building such a structure? Why the stars, Lord, why the skies, the entire cosmos can't begin to contain him. And me, who am I to think I can build a house adequate for God? Burning incense to him is all about I'm good for. I need your help. Send me a master artisan in gold, silver, bronze, iron, textiles of purple, crimson, and violet, who knows the crafts of engraving. He will supervise the trained craftsmen in Judah and Jerusalem that my father provided. Also send cedar, cypress, and algum logs from Lebanon. I know you have lumberjacks experience in the Lebanon forest. I'll send workers to join your crews to cut plenty of timber. I'm going to need a lot for this house I'm building. Is going to be absolutely stunning, a showcase temple. I'll provide all the food necessary for your crew of lumberjacks and loggers. 130,000 bushels of wheat, 120,000 gallons of wine, and 120,000 gallons of olive oil." Hiram, king of Tyre, wrote Solomon in reply: "It's plain that God loves his people. He made you king over them." He wrote on: "Blessed be the God of Israel, who made heaven and earth, and who gave King David a son so wise, so knowledgeable, and shrewd, to build a temple for God and a palace for himself. I've sent you Huram Abai. He already is on his way. He knows the construction business inside and out. His mother's from Dan, his father's from Tyre. He knows how to work in gold, silver, bronze, iron, stone, wood, and purple, violet, linen, and crimson textiles. He also is an expert engraver and competent to work out designs with your artists and architects. And those are my master David, your father. Go ahead, send the wheat, barley, olive oil, and wine you promised for my work crews. We'll log the trees you need from the Lebanon forest and raft them down to Joppa. You'll have to get the timber up to Jerusalem yourself." Solomon then took a census of all the foreigners living in Israel using the same census-taking method employed by his father. They numbered 153,600. He assigned 70,000 of them as common laborers and 80,000 to work the quarries in the mountains and 3,600 as foremen to manage the work crews. 2 Chronicles 3. So Solomon broke ground, launched construction of the house of God in Jerusalem on Mount Moriah, the place where God had appeared to his father David. The precise site, the threshing floor of Araunah, the Jebusite, had been designated by David. He broke ground on the second day in the second month of the fourth year of his rule. These are the dimensions that Solomon set for the construction of the house of God. 90 feet long, 30 feet wide. The porch in front stretched the width of the building, that is 30 feet, and it was 30 feet high. The interior was gold-plated. He paneled the main hall with cypress and veneered it with fine gold engraved with palm tree and chain designs. He decorated the building with precious stones and gold from Parvium. Everything was coated with gold veneer. Rafters, door frames, walls, and doors. Cherubim were engraved on the walls. Now, I thought you weren't supposed to make any graven images. He made the Holy of Holies a cube, 30 feet wide, long and high. It was veneered with 600 talents, something over 22 tons of gold. The gold nails weighed 50 shekels, a little over a pound. The upper rooms were also veneered in gold. He made 2 sculptures of cherubim, gigantic angel-like figures. Those are graven images, aren't they? For the Holy of Holies, both veneered with gold. The combined wing spread of the side-by-side cherubim, each wing measuring 7.5 feet, stretched from wall to wall 30 feet. They stood erect facing the main hall. He fashioned the curtain of violet, purple, and crimson fabric and worked a cherub design into it. He made 2 huge freestanding pillars, each 52 feet tall, the capitals extending another 7.5 feet. The top of each pillar was set off with an elaborate filigree of chains like necklaces from which hung 100 pomegranates. He placed the pillars in front of the temple, one on the right, the other on the left. The right pillar he named Jachin, which means security. The left pillar he named Boaz, which means stability. 2 Chronicles 4, temple furnishings. He made the bronze altar 30 feet long, 30 feet wide, and 10 feet high. He made a sea, that is an immense round basin of cast metal 15 feet in diameter, 7.5 feet high and 45 feet in circumference. Just under the rim, there were 2 parallel bands of something like bulls, 10 to each 1.5 foot. The figures were cast in one piece with the sea. The sea was set on 12 bulls, 3 facing north, 3 facing west, 3 facing south, 3 facing east. All the bulls faced outward and supported the sea on their hindquarters. The sea was 3 inches thick and flared at the rim like a cup or a lily. It held about 18,000 gallons. He made 10 wash basins, 5 set on the right and 5 on the left for rinsing the things used for the whole burnt offerings. The priests washed themselves in the sea. He made 10 gold lampstands following the specified pattern and placed 5 on the right and 5 on the left. He made 10 tables and set 5 on the right and 5 on the left. He also made 100 gold bowls. He built a courtyard specially for the priests and then the great court and doors for the court. The doors were covered with bronze. He placed the sea on the right side of the temple at the southeast corner. He also made ash buckets, shovels, and bowls, and that about wrapped it up. Herm completed the work he had contracted to do for King Solomon. 2 pillars, 2 bowl-shaped capitals for the top of the pillars, 2 decorative filigrees for the capitals, 400 pomegranates for the filigrees, a double row of pomegranates for each filigree, 10 wash stands with their basins, 1 sea and the 12 bulls under it, miscellaneous buckets, forks, shovels, and bowls. All these artifacts that Huram-Abi made for King Solomon for the temple of God were made of furnished bronze. The king had them cast in clay in a foundry on the Jordan plain between Succoth and Zarethan. These artifacts were never weighed. They were far too many. Nobody has any idea how much bronze was used. Solomon was also responsible for the furniture and accessories in the temple of God. The gold altar, the tables that held the bread of the presence, the lampstands of pure gold with their lamps to be lighted before the inner sanctuary, the Holy of Holies, the gold flowers, lamps, and tongs, all solid gold, the gold wick trimmers, bowls, ladles, and censers, the gold doors of the temple, doors of the Holy of Holies, and the doors to the main sanctuary. 2 Chronicles 5. That completed the work King Solomon did on the temple of God. He then brought in the holy offerings of his father David, the silver and gold and the artifacts. He placed them all in the treasury of God's temple. Installing the chest, bringing all this to a climax, Solomon got all the leaders together in Jerusalem, all the chiefs of the tribes and family patriarchs, to move the chest of the covenant of God from Zion and install it in the temple. All the men of Israel assembled before the king on the feast day of the 7th month, the feast of booths. When all the leaders of Israel were ready, the Levites took up the chest. They carried the chest to tent of meeting and all the sacred things in the tent used in worship. The priests, all Levites, carried them. King Solomon and the entire congregation of Israel were there before the chest, worshiping and sacrificing huge numbers of sheep and cattle, so many that no one could keep track. The priests brought the chest of the covenant of God to its place in the inner sanctuary, the Holy of Holies, under the wings of the cherubim. The outspread wings of the cherubim formed a canopy over the chest and its poles. The ends of the poles were so long that they stuck out from the entrance of the inner sanctuary, but were not noticeable further out. They're still there today. There was nothing in the chest itself but the 2 stone tablets that Moses had placed in it at Horeb, where God made a covenant with Israel after bringing them up from Egypt. The priests then left the holy place. All the priests were consecrated regardless of rank or assignment, and all the Levites who were musicians were there. Asaph, He-Man, there he is again, Jeduthun, and their families dressed in their worship robes. The choir and the orchestra assembled on the east side of the altar and were joined by 120 priests blowing trumpets. The choir and the trumpets made one voice of praise and thanks to God. Orchestra and choir in perfect harmony, singing and playing praise to God. Yes, God is good. His loyal love goes on forever. Then a billowing cloud filled the temple of God. The priests couldn't even carry out their duties because of the cloud, the glory of God that filled the temple of God. 2 Chronicles chapter 6, Solomon's dedication and prayer. Then Solomon said, God said he would dwell in the cloud, but I built a temple most splendid, a place for you to live in forever. The king then turned to face the congregation that had come together and blessed him. Blessed be God, the God of Israel, who spoke personally to my father David. Now he's done what he promised when he said, from the day I brought my people from Israel up from Egypt, I haven't set apart one city among the tribes of Israel in which to build a temple to honor my name, or chosen one person to be the leader. But now I have chosen both the city and a person, Jerusalem for honoring my name, and David to lead my people Israel. My father David very much wanted to build a temple honoring the name of God, the God of Israel. But God told him, it was good that you wanted to build a temple in my honor, most commendable. But you are not the one to do it. Your son will carry on your dynasty. He will build it for my name. And now you see the promise completed. God has done what he said he would do. That's a sermon right there. God has done what he said he would do. I have succeeded David, my father, and now rule Israel. Now I've built a temple to honor God, the God of Israel, and have secured a place for the chest that holds the covenant of God, the covenant he made with the people of Israel. Before the entire congregation of Israel, Solomon took his position at the altar of God and stretched out his hands. Solomon had made a bronze dais 7.5 feet square and 4.5 feet high and placed it inside the court. That's where he now stood. Then he knelt in full view of the whole congregation, stretched his hands to heaven and prayed. God, O God of Israel, there is no God like you in the skies above or on the earth below, who unswervingly keeps covenant with his servants and unfailingly loves them while they sincerely live in obedience to your way. You kept your word to David, my father, your promise. You did exactly what you promised, every detail. The proof is before us today. Keep it up, O God of Israel. Continue to keep the promises you made to David, my father, when you said, you'll always have a descendant to represent my rule on Israel's throne, on the one condition that your sons are as careful to live obediently in my presence as you have. O God, God of Israel, let this all happen. Confirm and establish it. Can it be that God will actually move into our neighborhood? While the cosmos itself isn't large enough to give you breathing room, let alone this temple I built. Even so, I'm bold to ask. Pay attention to these, my prayers, both intercessory and personal. O God, my God, listen to my prayers, energetic and devout. And I'm setting before you right now. Keep your eyes open to this temple day and night, this place you promised to dignify with your name. And listen to the prayers that I pray in this place, and listen to your people Israel when they pray at this place. Listen from your home in heaven, and when you hear, forgive. When someone hurts a neighbor and promises to make things right and then comes and repeats the promise before your altar in this temple, listen from heaven and act. Judge your servants, make the offender pay for the offense, and set the offended free, dismissing all charges. When your people Israel are beaten by an enemy because they've sinned against you, but then turn to you and acknowledge your rule in prayers, desperate and devout in this temple. Listen from your home in heaven, forgive the sin of your people, return them to the land you gave them and their ancestors. When the skies shrivel up and there is no rain because your people have sinned against you, but then they pray at this place, acknowledging your rule, and quit their sins because you have scourged them. Listen from your home in heaven, forgive the sins of your servants, your people Israel, then start over with them. Train them to live right and well. Send rain on the land that you gave us an inheritance to your people. That's good. Train them to live right. That's deep. When disasters strike, famine or catastrophe, crop failure, disease, locust, or beetle, or when an enemy attacks their defenses, calamity of any sort, any prayer that's prayed from anyone at all among your people Israel, their hearts penetrated by disaster, hands and arms thrown out for help to this temple. Listen from your home in heaven, forgive and reward us. Reward each life and circumstance, for you know each life from the inside. You're the only one with such inside knowledge, so they'll live before you in lifelong reverence and believing obedience on this land you gave our ancestors. And don't forget the foreigner who is not a member of your people Israel, but has come from a far country because of your reputation. People are going to be attracted here by your great reputation, your wonder-working power, and who come to pray at this temple. Listen from your home in heaven and honor the prayers of the foreigner, so that people all over the world will know who you are and what you're like, and live in reverent obedience before you, just as your own people Israel do. They'll know that you personally make this temple that I've built what it is. When your people go to war against their enemies at the time and place you send them, and they pray to God toward the city you chose and the temple I built to honor your name, listen from heaven to what they pray and ask for, and do what is right for them. When they sin against you, and they certainly will, there's no one without sin, and in anger you turn them over to the enemy, and they are taken captive to the enemy's land. Now that's you, Solomon, talking about that. There's no one without sin. You saying that because you ended up messing up later on. So that's what he's saying. He said when they sin against you, and they certainly will, there's no one without sin. God didn't say that. You saying that. All right, let me stop arguing with Solomon. And in anger, you turn them over to the enemy, and they have taken captive to the enemy's land, whether far or near. But that's true. Solomon said that. God didn't say that. Solomon said that. But repent in the country of their captivity, and pray with changed hearts in their exile. We've sinned, we've done wrong, we've been most wicked, and turn back to your heart and soul in the land of the enemy who conquered them, and pray to you toward their homeland, the land you gave their ancestors, toward the city you chose, and this temple I've built to honor of your name. Listen from your home in heaven to their prayers, desperate and devout. Do what is best for them. Forgive your people who've sinned against you. And now, dear God, be alert and attentive to prayer, all prayer offered in this place. Up, God, enjoy your new place of quiet repose, you and your mighty covenant chest. Dress your priests up in salvation clothes, that your holy people celebrate goodness. And don't, God, back out on your anointed ones. Keep in mind the love promised to David, your servant. This is the word.